This is the story of what happens in Varnavrata. To quickly recap the last video, we saw that Dhritarashtra made Yudhishthir as the crown prince of Hastinapur and did not make Duryodhan as the crown prince. Remember, Duryodhan had challenged Dhritarashtra that if he were to make Yudhishthir the crown prince instead of him, he would challenge Dhritarashtra against the whole assembly, and that would have made Dhritarashtra put up an army to fight against Duryodhan. Duryodhan was trying to see if his challenge could make Dhritarashtra not make Yudhishthir as the king. Dhritarashtra had everything in favor of Yudhishthir, so he made Yudhishthir as the king. Yudhishthir was strong. He had Arjuna on his side, who was a capable archer. He had Bhima, who was a very strong physically. He had Nakula and Sahadev, who were wise people. So everything was in favor of Pandavas, and the kingdom also were siding on the side of Pandavas. Vidur and Bhima and Bhishma were also on the side of making Yudhishthir as the crown prince. Duryodhan, when the ceremony of uh, crown prince of Yudhishthir was going on, Duryodhan comes in with a lot of weapons and with all of his 99 Kaurava brothers along with Karna, as if they were going to fight. But remember, at the end, Duryodhan puts up a show that he was actually bowing down in front of Yudhishthir and that he agrees with this decision. Inside, he was not at all comfortable with this decision, but he somehow decided that it was better to put up this show because maybe he felt that he did not have enough people or courage or the capacity to fight against the whole Hastinapur, which had all the Pandavas, even Bhishma. They had to fight against all of them. So he maybe thought that this was not the right time to put up a war against all of them. So maybe he decided it's okay to externally show as if you're okay with his decision. But internally, he's super jealous of the fact that Yudhishthir was made the crown prince. After becoming the crown prince, Yudhishthir did very well. He looked after all of his duties. Arjuna conquered a lot of neighboring kingdoms with the army, and all of the people in the kingdom were much, much more happier. Seeing all of this, Duryodhan was getting even more jealous. Every day he used to feel jealous, and he was constantly upset about this decision and everything that was going on. He was able to see Yudhishthir gain political power and people's attention and support in the kingdom and also outside the kingdom. So one day he goes privately to Dhritarashtra and expresses all of his concerns about what he's seeing with Yudhishthir and him getting the political power to be the king and that he would never become the king if this continues. Dhritarashtra, deep within, also had a deep attachment to his son Duryodhan and wanted to make him the king. It's not just Dhritarashtra who has this kind of an inclination or attachment. Every parent today also has attachment towards their children, and they want to see things through their children's eyes, or whatever they could not accomplish in their life, they would like to see their children's accomplish. Similarly, Dhritarashtra, although he was a caretaker king, wanted to see Duryodhan be the actual king and do much more, that even more than what he would have done. So Dhritarashtra had a deep desire as well to have Duryodhan as to make Duryodhan as the king, and Duryodhan was also in a huge state of conflict with this decision and his desire to be the crown prince and eventually be the king. So Dhritarashtra, having heard all of these um, emotions and concerns from Duryodhan, asked Duryodhan to call Kanika. Kanika was a chief minister from the kingdom of Shakuni, and he was visiting Hastinapur. So Dhritarashtra asked Duryodhan to arrange for a private meeting with Kanika. Kanika was brought in secretly in the chamber of Dhritarashtra, where Duryodhan was also present. He was called in primarily to get advice of how to handle this situation. Kanika talks about various ways or upayas of handling things in a political manner or kootaniti. So he talks about four ways. The first way to resolve a conflict which Duryodhan was having, or resolve any conflict in general, was through sama, or friendly dialogue, or a conversation. Because when you try to hear the other person's opinion, you understand their viewpoint, and most of the situations can be solved by just friendly dialogue and conversations, by understanding the other person. If that doesn't work, the second upaya or an option is to do dana, to pay the price, or to give gifts, or in a bad way, you could also say give bribes. Sometimes to resolve conflicts and not to have a war, it's better to resolve it through dana, or through gifts, or through some payment. So then the third thing he says is bheda, like if you are still in conflict, you can make the enemy kingdom be divided and have internal conflicts. So divide and conquer. So doing via bheda. And the fourth and the final tactic of resolving conflict that he explained was danda, or force, or using arms or weapons against your enemy. So he, in turn, at the end, suggested that the enemy, in the form of Pandavas, must be killed at any cost. So these were the four upayas or options that Kanika advised Dhritarashtra and Duryodhan. Duryodhan takes the third advice first and asks his father to build a new palace for Pandavas so that they can go out and live separately. And that was the third bheda, divide, right? Third tactic. And so Dhritarashtra agrees with it, and he asks Duryodhan and his one of the ministers, Purochan, to go and build a separate palace for Pandavas in a city of Varnavrata, and that Dhritarashtra would encourage all of the Pandavas to go there for a vacation. When Purochan goes to build that house, Duryodhan also uses the fourth tactic, danda, force. He makes Purochan build a palace made up of inflammable materials using lac, wax, cotton, and other things, and build a moat around it with water so that anyone inside couldn't come out of that palace, because and it was explained in such a way that it would be a protection for the people inside. So a lac house, which was inflammable, was built in the city of Varnavrat with the intention not just to make Pandavas stay outside, but the intention was to burn them and burn the palace along with the Pandavas once the Pandavas go there. Vidura, when he visited the palace, he was horrified to discover that the house was made up of lac and all kinds of inflammable materials. Vidura went to Kunti and said, "My brother wishes to kill you and your sons. He will gift you a house, a gift that you cannot refuse. Once you move in, he plans to burn it down, but fear not. You shall be safe. Below the house, I have built a tunnel which leads to the forest. Accept the gift of the house to avoid suspicion, and then escape through the tunnel. When you return, you will have a moral high ground that will go a long way in getting your children the rightful inheritance." Sure enough, the palace was given to the Pandavas and their mother, and as soon as they moved in, one of the first nights itself, it was set on fire. The Pandavas escaped unhurt with their mother, but they were shaken by the events. The family feud had suddenly taken a very serious turn. When the flames died out, The charred remains of women and 5 young men were also discovered. Everyone assumed these were the remains of Kunti and her sons. Dhritarashtra wept for them. Gandhari wept for them. Duryodhan and Dushasan also wept for them. Bhishma and Drona were inconsolable in their grief. Vidura pretended to mourn, for he knew the bodies were of those 6 people who had been drugged and left in place to burn in place of Kunti and her children. One of them was also Purochan, who was given a huge feast and didn't realize that it was burnt, that the palace was being burnt. But in one version of the story, Purochan himself sets the palace on fire. So let's assume that. Now, one must wonder, right? Like, what was Vidura thinking? Like, who is real? Who is actually crying really, and who is actually making a show, right? Once Bhima finds out that they were being burned, he is furious. He tells all of his brothers that this is the second time. First time, I was being poisoned by Duryodhan and drowned into the river. This time, they are killing us all by burning this palace. So, Yudhishthir consoles Bhim and tells him that let's escape first. So they were be able to escape through the tunnel and come out on the other side of the forest where a boat was waiting near the river, which they took and sailed across. And the reason Yudhishthir gave at that time was, let us build alliance before we go back. Let them feel that we are dead. We need enough people in our support to fight against the kingdom of Hastinapur. We now very clearly know that they are evil people and their actions are very bad. So that's how Pandavas had escaped with their mother, and the burning lac house burnt the 6 people inside. There are some learnings here. This was a very shameful act by Kauravas, especially Duryodhan, who built this lac house, and now this action makes them as villains, and they have to pay a price for this. We also see the role of Vidur, who gives advice to be vigilant and protects the Pandavas as a fatherly figure. Remember, Yudhishthir always sees Vidura as a father. And there is some story behind it as well. Remember, Yudhishthir is the son of Lord Yama, and Vidur is an incarnation of Yama. So there is definitely some ties of Yama, Vidur, and overall Pandavas. So his advice was very useful for the Pandavas in to be able to escape from this burning palace. Also, we see that Kanika was called for an advice instead of Vidur, who was also the chief minister. Vidur was on the side of righteousness. Kanika gave advice that was totally wicked. So, who we get advice from is also very important. If we get advice from wrong people, our actions are also wrong. So think. In the next video, we will see all the events that happen with Pandavas and all the excitement and all of the adventures that Pandavas face in the forest. If you like my video, hit like or subscribe to my channel for future videos. Thank you.